think the other issues are education, immigration reform, and the environment. Those are the things that we really need to address. And unfortunately, the other reason I'm running is because for about the last 40 years, most of those issues were the issues, and we've done nothing about it. We've got a big partisan divide, and I don't think that's necessary. I think we can actually work through and do what's right for America. So that's why I'm running, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have. Are you muted?
What are the couple of bills or that you think you would want to introduce right off of the bat, or the issue you'd want to work on the first thing if you were elected?
Well, clearly we got to do something about healthcare, as I said, and here's how it plays out. The president has issued an executive order mandating that 300 healthcare things are transparent in price on January 1st. Like it or not, Obamacare was well-intentioned. It was well-intentioned with regards to covering people with pre-existing conditions, getting everybody coverage. In theory, we were supposed to get a $2,500 a year discount per person on health insurance. We were going to be able to keep our doctor in our plan. Those are, in fact, good intentions, but on top of a dysfunctional market, a market where you don't know what you're going to pay, right? Oftentimes you sign up for stuff and you get a bill for thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, and you didn't even know it was going to come. That's a dysfunctional market. It's dysfunctional because you don't know what you're going to pay. You could go bankrupt because you don't know what you're going to pay. There's no incentive to be healthy under our current system. And those things can be fixed. Drug pricing is probably 60 to 600% too high because we have a broker between us and the pharmaceutical manufacturers that's taking a lot of money. We need to fix those things. So right off the bat, I would go after healthcare and reducing costs, and I would expand transparency from day one. The good news is it doesn't require legislative action. It requires the Secretary of HHS to take that action and expand it. So that's where I'm headed first. I think immigration reform is probably right there, and so is the environment.
And can you expand a little bit on the immigration reform and the environment, both of what
Yes.
you do with those?
So right now in immigration, it's actually more complicated than the tax code. I know that's hard to believe, but it really is. There's 6 ways we immigrate somebody into the United States, and those 6 ways are far too complicated. What we need to do is reduce it down to 3 things. One is if you're a skilled worker and there's a job that we need you to do here in America, you should come. 2 is, family structures have to be maintained, so people immigrate for family reunion purposes. And the 3rd is for humanitarian reasons. Right now, we have 40 different visa categories. That's insane. I mean, you can get a visa if you're a model, a fashion model who has special attributes. I don't know what that means, right? So visas, work visas, quotas, all of those things make it far too complicated. We have to simplify legal immigration so that we can end illegal immigration. We have to do it in a rational way. And frankly, the people who are here who want to apply for citizenship should buy health insurance while they're here rather than having us pay for it every time they go to an emergency room as well. So there's a lot that needs to be done on it.
Was a big discussion yesterday that in our conference. So that's interesting to hear. What about the environment?
I get asked all the time if I would rejoin the Paris Accord, and my answer is not the way it's written, for sure. I mean, this is the largest global public works project ever proposed. It's not enforceable. It doesn't have achievable metrics. 2 years into it, as of 2018, they post something called the emission gap. So these are 195 countries submit what they're going to do by 2030. 2 years into it in 2018, 194 countries forecasted that they're not going to make it. The only country that was going to make it is the United States of America. So I think we can do better than that, but we need to do it rationally. First and foremost, natural gas has actually contributed to major reductions in CO2 emissions in England and the United States. It would work very well in developing countries in Africa, where they're burning wood and biomass for heat and electricity. There's some rational things like distributing natural gas more broadly. There's some carbon capture technologies I'd like to deploy. There's a way to take brine from a gas well and combine it with CO2, airborne CO2 emissions, and make calcium carbonate, which we need for buildings, making cement. So there's a lot of innovation in that category that we can use. I would clean up 8.5 million tons in our waterways. I would continue to plant a lot of trees. I would not go with a Green New Deal, but there's certainly some things that we can do to make our environment better, and we need to take action on right away.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? I can't believe you have no questions. They're all tired on Friday morning, evidently.
Maybe I talk too much.
Let's see. Go ahead, Steve.
Just say, let me add something else on education. One of the reasons why I'm so concerned about education is in the district, we have a number of schools that graduate 70 to 75% of their students, but the math proficiency for those students who graduate is under 25%. Reading is under 40%. Education itself, we can use technology and online learning. We need to make online learning better, whether we like it or not. But the problem we have is 52% of the students in America over the last few years have failed all 4 categories of the ACT test. They've gone on to college. They have to take a bunch of remedial learning, and 40% of them don't graduate in 6 years, and they were stuck with $100,000 in debt. We must rebuild education. We have to break off the processes that are rigid, that are inflexible. We need to use things like Teach One Math, which improves math scores by 53%. We need to go to query-based learning. We need to go to a number of other tools that allow students to progress regardless of their grade level, and it picks up those students who start out in a very poor vocabulary situation and ultimately fail. We can't keep going the way we are, and school choice is not the only answer. We need more than that.
Okay, do you have any thoughts, any like burning support or opposition to any of the ballots that are on the Colorado ballot this year?
Personally, I think Proposition 115 has to pass. I think, you know, whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, after 22 weeks, I think, unless the life of the mother's at risk, I think we should, you know, stop abortions from happening all the way up to 40 weeks. I think that's rational. I think the national popular vote, we have to turn that down. We can't allow national popular vote to be the way we select a president in Colorado. It would make us completely insignificant. California and New York would be, you know, the area where we would struggle the most. I think we need to take a hard look at this Gallagher change. I mean, clearly in the rural communities, Gallagher's hurting fire departments and other things. I think we need to take a hard look at that. I think the tax decrease should hopefully pass. And I think the taxpayers ought to have a say in enterprise zones. Those are the ones that I think that are highest on my list.
What are your thoughts on relief of student debt?
You know, there's got to be a way to deal with student debt, but I don't think it's the government that needs to do it. I think we got to go back to colleges. I mean, we've created a formula, believe it or not, that can grade the value of a degree. So if CU versus CSU, both business degrees, we look at 2-year salaries, how long it takes people to get a job, the cost to confer the degree. We've looked at all of these things, and there's some really rational ways to determine the value of a degree. I think if the value of the degree is too low, we probably need to get some relief from the colleges themselves because they're pushing programs that are not making. And I think the other thing is high school diplomas where you don't have, you don't really have a high school education at a level where you don't need remedial learning. Those are driving up tuition. We have to restructure the student loan program. It's just too tied into increases in tuition as well. But I really think we need to have a serious conversation about education from K through the end of a college or trade school degree.
Do you have any thoughts on free community college?
Nothing is really free. The question is, can you fund community college out of education? One of the thoughts I have on that is if you come out of high school and you're not proficient in math and reading, going on to a community college is probably a better pathway than going back to high school. And I think that has to be factored in. I would like to see high school performance, and I'm not blaming teachers or principals. I think the structure is wrong. But if you can't restructure it to the point where people are coming out of high school prepared for college to be done in 4 years, then you probably do need to pay for some community college as part of your public education process.
Okay, and I guess a final question for you is, if you are elected, how can we work with you as an organization in achieving your goals?
You know, I'm intending to have at least one town hall a month. I answer my phone, I give out my private cell, my email. Everybody that goes to Washington needs to have ideas. They need to have a narrative. They need to understand what's really going on in the communities so that they can make appropriate decisions. What I often hear from leadership in Congress or from just congressional people in general is, we need leadership. Well, okay, what is your ideas for leadership? How do we solve our problems? What ideas do you have to make significant changes? It comes down to them mostly existing in Washington. I signed a term limit pledge almost the day I got into the race because I believe after 4 terms, if I haven't accomplished the primary objectives on healthcare, education, immigration, and the environment, then somebody else should give it a try. But mostly just bubble up ideas, communicate with me, let me know what you're seeing on the ground, what's working and not working. If you, for example, I ran into this the other day, somebody was involved in a co-op, 2,500 members of a co-op, they couldn't get a PPP loan. The co-op was going out of business because co-ops weren't categorized right in the PPP structure. We called the SBA. We said, hey, how does this work? And we actually helped somebody that way. But if nobody had brought that up to me, we would never know. So we need ideas and we need information.
And just a heads up or a thoughts for you, one of the issues Dean runs into all the time, even though we cover those suburban front range areas, because I live in Fort Morgan, as soon as they see my zip code, it's like you're not one of our constituents. So if you are elected, I would love it if you have a way of me being able to get through to you without just being determined by what my zip code is.
Yeah, in Fort Morgan, I'm going to single you out a little bit because my wife is the associate district governor for Rotary and she covers Fort Morgan. I love Fort Morgan. I know the guys that run Quail Ridge Dairy pretty well. I'm a farm kid at heart. I grew up on a dairy farm. So I love coming out to Fort Morgan. So when she comes out to Fort Morgan, I'll let you know ahead of time and we'll have a conversation when I'm there.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Anything last minute for Steve before we let him go? Thank you much for spending some time with us this morning, and you have a great weekend.
You guys raise your expectation for people who you're voting for. We've got to do better. Thank you very much, and you guys enjoy your weekend as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. If Mr. McCorkle hangs in there with us, we got about 15 minutes waiting for some more people to join us. Enough time for me to go heat up my coffee and take a quick little break. Joe, there's a private message for you in the chat box if you would look at that and answer my question. Okay, we'll get started here again in just a few minutes. And then they should be just back to back if everybody makes it on the line. So we'll see how we'll have a break between the last of them today and Corey this afternoon at 4. That was the soonest he could get on the call. Senator Gardner, as we all learn out here, we know each other so well. We have to remember to use the right titles in certain situations. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here, and I'll let them on as they come on into the waiting room here. Tad, Carrie, and Claudia, I sent you all private messages during the break when you get a chance to look at them. Our next speaker is running for Congressional District 4, which is currently represented by Ken Buck. And this gentleman, his name is Ike McCorkle. And because we haven't had coffee with you yet, which you just haven't heard, that's like a prerequisite to come out to Fort Morgan and have coffee with me. But because you haven't had coffee with us yet, and a lot of us don't know you, we probably would like to have you start with who you are, your background, and then tell us why you're running and what your priorities are.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My voice is sounding great right now, but I've got a paralyzed vocal cord from a combat injury. So if I start coughing on you, I apologize. And it's kind of funny for my kids because I'm always constantly clearing my throat from this injury that I received. And so when we go to the grocery store, they're constantly telling me, Dad, stop it. Everybody's going to think you got COVID, you know? So, yeah. So thanks for having me today. I'm Ike McCorkle. I like to tell myself a little bit like my namesake, Ike Dwight D. Eisenhower, because what I like to remind folks of is that yesterday's Eisenhower Republican is today's progressive. And so what we really need to start focusing on is voting for people based on the merit of their character, their integrity, their policy and their platform, and how that policy and platform is going to affect quality of life for the people in our district, whether or not it's going to improve wages, whether or not that policy and platform is going to invest in the infrastructure, in water distribution infrastructure, in the energy infrastructure, in the jobs, and in the opportunity, in the creation of opportunity right here in Congressional District 4. I think we have to ask ourselves the question of, are we happy with the conditions that the current administration has set? Are we happy with the level of effort, engagement, and investment that has been orchestrated, put together, garnered by our current representative? I'm running for office because I'm not happy with that. I'm running for office because I feel like the conditions that are being set and that have been set for decades have disenfranchised the majority of Americans, have left rural Americans out to dry, and have compromised opportunity for my children and for your children. And so, like I said, I'm Ike, and I was raised, excuse me, there it goes, by a tough single mom in rural Washington State, Texas, and Alabama. My mom joined the Air Force when I was 8 years old. We grew up before that on welfare, food stamps, and free meals at school. And, that gave me perspective of what type of programs need to be legislated to give our citizens a leg up so that, like my mom, all of our citizens have the ability to lift themselves up by their bootstraps and to improve the disposition of their children's potential future. That means that we need a robust investment in our children's educational institutions. That means that we need legislation that incentivizes reinvestment in the infrastructure that provides opportunity, that provides jobs, that in fact does improve quality of life for people in Congressional District 4, in rural Colorado, in the eastern 22 counties, because rural Coloradans and rural Americans, for that matter, for decades, significantly since the Reagan administration, have been abandoned. Been abandoned in ways of investment in our educational institutions, in ways of investment in our healthcare systems. We see that right in Congressional District 4, where veterans and communities were abandoned in 2001 when the VA hospital shut down. The fact of the matter is that in many ways, it's simply not profitable for capitalist corporations to invest in rural Colorado. And so government's job is to raise the bar. And our legislators' job, our representatives' job, is to do the hard work, to reach across the aisle, to draft a legislative policy and to utilize current policy like the Water Infrastructure Innovation and Finance Act to marry federal and state investment in water infrastructure and distribution products right in our backyard, to invest in repairing our roads and our bridges, to invest in installing the renewable energy systems of the future that stand to provide good paying, sustainable jobs right in our backyards. Now, we're not going to shut down any industry, and we're not going to kill any jobs. We're going to rapidly and radically expand employment and expand opportunity in the energy production industry as we rapidly execute a just transition to non-carbon producing methods. We understand in Congressional District 4, as farmers and ranchers and rural Coloradans, that climate change is real, that we are suffering a decades-long drought, and that the current administration and our current representative has no plan to address the needs of rural Coloradans. I'm Ike McCorkle. I'm a retired Marine officer. I'm a Purple Heart recipient, a former special operator. I'm a proud father. I'm a resident of District 4. And you have my word that I'll be your voice in the United States Congress, that I will not serve special interest groups, not millionaires, not billionaires, and not any corporate lobbyists, because I don't accept their corrupt corporate political influence. I'm 100% grassroots funded, and I'll be fighting for you, and I'll restore integrity. And by restoring integrity in our seat in the U.S. House, I'll thereby restore your trust and your confidence in your representative. My promise is to be available and to listen, to do the hard work, to conduct a deliberative process, and as a legislator to work across the aisle with other representatives like Republican Matt Gaetz, who have also sworn off corrupt corporate political action committee contributions. My promise is to be available, to listen, to make progress. I'm Ike, and I'll be serving independents, Republicans, and Democrats alike in the United States Congress. and I'd love to entertain a few of your questions. And I apologize about my stupid voice.
That's one of those things that I think we can all totally understand. Do you have a plan to fix the ag labor shortage issue on seasonal workers?
Yeah, I do. And I think we need comprehensive immigration reform and work visa reform. And the way that we need to address this problem is by investment in adequately funding the personnel that we need in place to administratively process all of those work permits. I do think that we need to address the labor shortage. And the way that I think we do that is by increasing the number of personnel that we have available to process those work permits.
Okay, this next question. They appreciate your position supporting improved infrastructure. What thoughts do you have for increasing funding for infrastructure? And how can those funding increases be used to improve the rural infrastructure?
Yeah, well, I mentioned one of my ideas is utilization of the Water Infrastructure Innovation and Finance Act of 2014 to marry federal and state investment. You can build projects up to $40 million and marry federal investment in those projects. It just takes doing the work, bringing together all the legislators and the interested stakeholders in the district to make the plan, and then you have to put the application in. So I want to utilize WIFA to address the district's water infrastructure needs immediately. And I would like a Rural Reinvestment Act to get passed to immediately allocate funds to repair our crumbling roads and bridges. Those are like immediate methods of bringing an influx of revenue into our infrastructure. And the longer term solution to our employment opportunity in our district, to the environmental crisis, so addressing the drought, to our water shortages and to our power production shortages and communication system shortages, is a federal works projects bill. Between 1933 and 39, the Work Progress Administration and the Civilian Conservation Corps electrified rural America, installed the interstate highway system. They paved 280,000 plus miles of road. They built thousands of hospitals and schools. They laid 9,000 miles of sanitary sewer lines and water distribution systems. That's the type of large-scale infrastructural reinvestment that we need. And that's what stands the greatest potential to benefit rural Colorado and rural America.
Okay. What are your thoughts on oil and gas and states that start to overregulate them or decide that it's a one-size-fits-all process and doesn't take into account differences in geography and layout and those type of things?
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution set that we need to implement. And we've seen the oil and gas industry. Let's just talk about it frankly. Through the COVID crisis, we've seen the oil and gas industry going through the same woes that the coal industry went through. And we saw what happened in Craig, Colorado, when coal industry workers were left out to dry when oil and gas became cheaper to produce and more lucrative than coal. The same situation exists now. And with the economic impacts of COVID, we saw oil and gas go into negative territory. It's just the economic trends of the market. And we have to follow those economic trends if we want to remain lucrative and provide opportunity. And so what we need to do with the oil and gas industry, because it is becoming less economically fruitful to produce oil and gas, and only remains so because of federal subsidies. We need to examine how we're going to protect those workers' wages moving forward as this industry, continues to decline. That's the trend of the market. What we need to do in order to ensure that those workers' rights are protected and that we expand opportunity, not kill it, is pass a federal energy mandate and a federal jobs guarantee. The federal energy mandate will state that all new investments and installations in the energy industry, even the carbon producing sectors of our energy production industry, be made in the renewable sector, thereby incentivizing a more rapid transition. And what we need is a just transition that protects those workers' wages. So we put in that legislation a federal jobs guarantee to give those workers peace of mind that they're not going to lose their employment. They're going to be able to put food on their table and keep a roof over their head. So we put in place a federal jobs guarantee to guarantee workers in the energy industry that their revenue, their wages aren't going to go away. We pass a federal energy mandate that requires new installations and investments be made in the renewable sector. And we utilize our subsidies and our tax incentives to incentivize a more rapid and just transition. We need a large federal reinvestment married with private investment in the installation of the renewable energy systems of the future that are going to create jobs, address the environmental crisis, and advance our technology and infrastructure and communications infrastructure all at the same time, in the same way that we invested in rural electrification and the building out of the interstate highway system and the building of schools, dams, roads, bridges during the New Deal era. That's the type of reinvestment that we need in our future.
Okay, the next question is what are your thoughts on the president's executive order to modernize water management and infrastructure?
Well, it's sorely needed. And, there are places where compromise can be made and progress can be made. And, that's what we need in our legislators. Individuals in office that are not going to continue to pander divisive party line rhetoric, but that are going to examine the merits of policy and make progress. So this executive action, while I don't agree with every tenet of it, I believe is sorely needed, especially in our district. And so I would support it.
Okay, the next question is on broadband, and you've talked about infrastructure, but in particular, do you have a plan or thoughts on how we can actually finally bring broadband to our rural communities?
Yeah, so I mentioned a minute ago, profitability. And it's simply not being profitable for some, large multinational conglomerate communication, corporate communication companies to install that communications network, those in communication networks in rural Congressional District 4. In the same way that it's not profitable for private hospitals to build and employ and upkeep their facilities in rural Colorado. So we need the federal government to do its job. And what I mean by that is the federal government needs to raise the bar. And what I mean by that is by instituting the installation of a federal ground-based protected communication system, we would raise the bar and cause these private communication companies to compete with that level of communication network capacity and capability, which we have seen during this crisis is not just a luxury, it's essential to our ability to, during this pandemic, be able to conduct our work, be able to ensure that our kids are educated. And so, again, with respect to communications infrastructure and networks installation, I think we need a federal works projects bill to immediately raise the bar and cause competition to be created in the communication network installation in rural America. And so I think that we need federal investment and leadership on this issue. And I think that we need the private communication companies that have already been provided incentives and revenue to install broadband networks in rural America to be held to account, and for it to be transparent, and for them to hold up their end of the bargain with respect to what they've already promised to install and been provided revenue and incentive to do so. You're muted, ma'am.
Unmuted me. What are your thoughts on women's health like abortion?
Yeah, so I think that we need free and fair access to high quality healthcare. I believe that every one of our citizens deserves access to high quality healthcare, and high quality healthcare that won't evict or bankrupt them. So for instance, 60% of evictions annually come directly from unpaid medical bills. I don't believe that that is morally right. So I think that we need to examine what is the morally sound thing to do and what is the fiscally most responsible thing to do. And that is to provide our citizens in the richest nation on earth with access to high quality healthcare, comprehensive healthcare. And so I think, I believe, based, on the numbers, that the most fiscally sound thing to do and the morally right thing to do is to ensure that all of our citizens have access to the highest quality healthcare in the world. There's no reason not to do that in the richest nation on earth. And so I think and believe that we need a single payer Medicare for all healthcare system that would provide all of our citizens with access to the preventative and emergent healthcare that they need and deserve.
Okay, and the second part of that, well, Pro 15 does not deal with any of these issues. The question has come up, what is your stance on abortion?
Yeah, I believe that we should uphold Roe versus Wade, and that women deserve access to comprehensive health care, and that those healthcare services and decisions, should be being made between that healthcare provider and that patient, and that no entity, private or government, should intrude upon the decisions that are being made between a healthcare provider and their patient.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the last question that we would ask, and that we've asked all of our candidates today, is if you could tell us what we could do to work with you if you are elected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you guys so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I genuinely appreciate your time. I know that it's valuable. What you could do to help me is advise me. I promised that I would be available, that I would show up, and that I would listen. But what I need is subject matter experts across the district, across the Eastern 22, to communicate to me what the needs, the will, and the interests of the people in those counties are. My plan to accomplish that is to form a citizens advisory commission of 3 from every county, made up of an independent, a Republican, and a Democrat, so that we can bring everyone into the fold and make decisions in the collaborative process, and ensure that our legislative platform and policy serves the needs, the will, and the interests of all of our constituents, Republicans, independents, and Democrats alike, that we bring Americans together around our shared values and our common humanity again, and that we start living up to our values, treating each other with dignity and respect, and that we start setting the conditions that are that are going to yield that American dream for my children and for yours. So I just want to thank you all so much for having me, and I'm always available, and that's my promise. As your representative in the U.S. House, if you trust me with your vote, I will be your voice in the U.S. House, and I'll always be available.
Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you in person when all of this is, the travel schedules allow. We have quite a list of field trips and people we want to meet, so hopefully sometime in the new year that will happen. But thank you very much for your time and talking to us today.
Yes, ma'am. Stay in touch. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Okay, it's lunchtime, guys. I can hear my stomach talking a little bit. Our next speaker is at 12:30. I gave these House and Senate people a whole hour because usually they can fill up that amount of time. But they're pretty succinct today with their answers and their thoughts. So 12:30 will be Richard Holtorf. And Richard, he covers Washington County, Lincoln County, is it Elbert County, I believe. So he covers some of our more southern, southwest areas of the state. And then after Richard is Representative Kinbuck. Then right after that is Representative Rod Pelton, who covers most of our 15 counties. And then that will finish up about 2 o'clock or so, and we'll have a break until 4 when Corey comes on. So thanks for hanging in there with us, and we'll see you about 12:20 so we can be ready for our next speaker. Thank you. Welcome everyone back again. We're just waiting for our speaker to get online. If I don't hear from him shortly, I'll see if I can track him down somewhere. Patricia shared that she's having supper instead of lunch. I'm ready for supper. We could just move this day ahead 5 hours really quickly. Dusty, how come we have no great backgrounds today? She must not be back yet.
Yeah, I don't even see Dusty.
Her name's there,
Oh,
but she's not sharing any backgrounds.
I still haven't worked out how you do a background. Somebody needs to teach me that. I was on a meeting with Leanne the other day, and Claudia was going to tell me how to do it, but we didn't have time.
Click on your video thing at the wherever your video shows up and right click on that little arrow. And it says choose video background.
Oh, it turned off my video, I think, did it? Choose virtual background. Ah,
So
okay.
you can add a picture in there or something like that. So I just changed mine to the Pro 15 logo. My head's over the O.
Yes.
I'm the O in Pro 15. Oh, I like that. That's a good slogan.
So can you take a background like out of your gallery or something?
Yes.
Okay.
So I had one up yesterday. I was in Maine, and one where I was at the state capitol. I need to add some more too there. I don't know what happened to my lighthouse one. Sometimes it's fun to be at the lighthouse.
Yep, I'll have to explore that. Thank you. See, I learned something else today.
I learn something new every day. These guys all got emails yesterday. Joe, your trailer's got something flying off of it. I've been excited about a couple of the things that have come through this morning in some of these discussions. The beef cattle one, where the rancher would be able to sell directly from their farm to the consumer. And I know Christensen Ranch here in Morgan County has started doing that. And they couldn't even keep up during COVID. They had backlogs of not having enough beef. And I thought that Ike McCorkle's thing about having 3 people from each county he represents, a D and an R and an unaffiliated, was interesting. It will be, if he's elected, it will be interesting to see how that works out.
Would that be the first time something like that has ever been done?
That I'm aware of. I mean, they all have, like Dusty is Ken's representative. She lives in Fort Morgan, but the office is in Greeley. And Dusty makes every meeting around the region. So in a way, it's there, just in a different way. This would be citizens that aren't part of his paid staff. So no, it was a different concept, and it just was a little interesting.
Yeah.
Because it is a big region to try to keep track of everything that's going on in the region.
And then it would help to get, a more nonpartisan approach to it too.
Okay, I'm disappearing so I can get Richard the call-in number. Oh, I can't leave the meeting while let's see. Richard, I'm going to put you on speaker and see if we can do it that way.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Can you guys hear him on my phone?
So far, yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, all right, they can hear you. So this is Richard Holtorf, who is a representative from our region. I know he has Lincoln County, Elbert County. Can you tell him what the other counties are you represent, Richard?
Certainly. So I have 9 counties in House District 64. We've got Elbert County, we've got Lincoln County, we've got Washington County. To the north, we go down to Kiowa County. Working our way south, we'll go to Broward County, Raleigh County, down to Big County, continuing south on to Packard County, Los Alamos County. And I think that might cover all of them. Hopefully somebody was counting. But pretty much eastern and southeastern Colorado, east of I-25. I don't have Otero County, that's House District 47, but Otero County has adopted me because the folks like me so much. So that's my district. But I do have in Pro 15's area, Lincoln County, Washington County, and I believe Elbert County.
Okay, so we're making this very informal today. So what we've asked the other candidates that have spoken to us is just to tell you why you want to be a representative at the state of Colorado, and what are a couple, 3 of the big issues that you want to pursue in the next session.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and I was really happy to meet you last January when I took over for Jimmy Clark Lewis. And the reason I'm running again is because I made a promise to the people that snowy day, December 28th, when I was selected by appointment, that I would, in fact, run another 2 years, because they didn't want just one person to come in for 1 year and then disappear. They wanted a longer-term commitment, and that's what I made. I'm a man of my word, and I made that promise, so I will run for 2 more years and serve House District 64. We know that redistricting is going to take place. There's some questions on what the House districts will look like, and there's sure to be some changes, so I may get redistricted out of House District 64 if Washington County moves to a different district, which is possible, but nobody knows until that committee makes those decisions in 2021.
Okay, and what are you looking at in this next legislative session that you would like to get accomplished?
Well, I will tell all the folks that are listening in for your annual meeting that we've got a lot of problems. The governor has made some bad policy decisions that have directly attacked small business. They've directly attacked our economy, our tourism economy, even our agricultural economy. So many retail businesses. There's so many impacts. Translate to a lot lower tax revenues for the state, so we're going to have a huge problem with the budget. We also have big problems in CDOT with excessive spending and not getting a lot done. I was at a conference a meeting yesterday or the day before about CDOT's woeful waste of money and the contracting that's going on, that we're giving hundreds of millions of dollars away and getting very little the result. The bang for the buck isn't there because of the problems we have in CDOT. That's going to have to be addressed. All my bills that got postponed last session, some of those I'd like to regenerate. I've been talking to constituents about getting their input on priorities. Education, K through 12 funding, protecting our traditional gas energy resources are still fights that I'm willing to fight for Colorado. We're not giving away our Western heritage. We're not giving away our Colorado traditions. We're not giving away the things that make Colorado what it is today to the socialists and the leftists and the radicals that are trying to change this state into Eastern California. And you guys see it. The riots in Denver, the damage to the Capitol, the tearing down of a Union soldier statue that represented our contribution to winning the Civil War and stopping slavery, and supporting the Emancipation Proclamation. You just can't make up the craziness that's going on in our country and in our state. And it's the fault of the leadership. We lack some leadership, and we can change this. This election cycle is something that we need to have a great fall awakening to make some changes in this state, because I'm telling you right now, we're going down a lot of bad policy directions, and they're going to lead to very unpleasant results in future time if we don't get a hold of these things. So if you vote for me, I'm going to bring some leadership that's going to protect rural values for rural Colorado. And I've got a lot more experience than most people understand. If you go to my website at www.holtorforcolorado.com, you can learn a little more about me and what I do and what I bring to the table. And I tell most people that you might not like the delivery, but the message and the impact and the results are going to be very good, very strong, and very positive for Colorado. But I'm not going to bring it to you on a silver plate. I'm not going to put a bunch of sugar on top and a lot of syrup and honey, because these real problems have to be addressed head on, straight on, and very frankly and directly. You can't dance around the problems and think you're going to get solutions. So, Kathy, that's my message. If people want to ask me a few questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Well, right now we have no questions, so I guess, and I had forgotten about the fact that you might get redistricted, that Washington County might get moved to another district, which would definitely pull you out as a resident of Washington County. What do you think maybe the first bill or two is that you're going to introduce in session?
Well, I've been going over with some constituents. I've got a lot of bills that we're looking at. I will tell you that I'm kind of waiting to see how the election goes to make that call. I've got one bill that I will throw out there, though, and the Democrats aren't going to like it. But we've got to cut our spending. The last 4 years, Colorado legislators in the Gold Dome have been punch drunk with spending. They're like drunken sailors on shore leave. And I'll tell you, if our state population goes up 5 or 10%, our spending shouldn't go up 25 to 30%. And it's happened. You can look at the statistics. Something is wrong with that. Our cash reserves weren't significant enough to cover the pandemic. Barely covered the pandemic. The governor's putting people on furloughs because he sees the writing on the wall. Oh crap, we don't have enough money to pay all our folks. So one of the first bills I want to bring up, I want to give a pay cut to all our senior executives in the state governance. I want to give a pay cut to everybody that's making above $65,000. I want to give a pay cut to everybody making more than $100,000, $150,000. Our state employees, including myself as a legislator, we need to tighten our belts. When things get tough, we tighten our belts in the country where I'm from. Okay? Well, who's tightening their belts in state governance? Most of my Democrat friends don't even know how to put another notch in their belt when times are tough. So that's the lesson I'm going to bring forth. It's going to be in legislation. I'm pretty sure it will not be popular.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Richard. We appreciate it. And we will see you down the road as things start moving a little more.
Okay, well, thanks for making me and allowing me to be a part of your organization. I look forward to you. If I forget about that, then I won't. I'll remember that invitation, and I will eagerly await it in 2021, Kathy.
Okay. Well, I lost you. What invitation was that? What did I agree to?
Well, you just said when you guys came up to the Capitol,
Oh.
you're calling on the Capitol, you'd invite me
Yes.
to go out and meet with your folks. Do you remember what we did last year?
Yep. And we will, I guess this year we're going to do a virtual one. So we won't be at the Capitol this year, but we will be at some point in time and we'll get you included. I think we want to do a plane talk with you also.
All right. Well, I'm a pretty plain talking individual. I talk straight, I shoot straight, and I throw a rope pretty straight. So if you want to talk to me, that's about all you're going to get. There won't be any side talk, cross talk, bull cock talk, horse crap talk. It'll be straight, plain talk. That's how I was raised.
All righty. Thanks, Richard. You have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Okay, so we will just wait. Ken is up next. So he's usually pretty good. Sometimes he runs a little bit late, but I'm sure he'll be signing on here pretty soon. Anything out of the conference the last couple of days that really struck you or stuck with you, something you're going to use down the road or something you didn't know?
I really liked the keynote. He was hilarious. And I've already been in conversation with him trying to bring him in to our early childhood conference in April. So yeah, thank you for that. I think he would just be a boost to our providers and our early childhood professionals after everything that they've been going through the last year. So I think it'll be good.
Well, and I didn't, when we booked him, I didn't know whether we were going to be in person or virtual. And you never know when it's kind of a more upbeat, humorous, motivational, how it's going to come across virtually. But I was watching people's faces and we were all laughing at different times. So
Yeah,
part of it came through.
It was hilarious. I was laughing.
Have any of you been online and or sent an email to him to get his email books? I'll put that out in a post later on. I want to, even though I have a Kindle and my iPad, I want his hardcover books. So I was just on Amazon ordering those while we were.
Is that where you ordered them, Kathy? Were all three of them available on Amazon?
I could only find two, but I've got to go back and find that third book. I think it's, but the one that I gave away yesterday is definitely on Amazon, and you can get it on Kindle also. But
All right, we're thinking if we bring him, we'll order some books and give them away as some door prizes.
Yeah. So at least two of them I found, and then I ran out of time. I've got to go back and find that third one.
Kathy, was that recorded?
Yes, it will be It won't be up today, I know, but first part of next week, I'll get started getting all of the recordings back up.
Oh, that's great. So I'll be able to catch some of the things then.
Right. Most of the conference I got recorded. I missed Jerry this morning. I had a big note in front of me that says, turn on recorder, but I just ignored the note that was in front of me. And I missed a couple of presentations yesterday, but most of them will all be online. There'll be a lot of dead space, so you'll have to fast forward as you go, but we have a YouTube channel that they'll be up on. Anybody else, anything that struck them as interesting, unusual, didn't know, reinforced something?
You said there was a lot of interesting discussion or talk around immigration issues, so I wondered what that had been.
And I was, Steve House this morning really surprised me because that's not, I know they've been working on immigration, and one of the things that Pro 15 belongs to a coalition that we're working on immigration and trying to get it to where we don't just talk about it before an election, but after the election that becomes a priority. Making it easier to apply for, making it not so much based on where the country is they're coming from, but the needs that we have for that labor. Is it high tech? Is it hospitality, construction, ag workers? And making the process a little easier both for the employer and the person that they're trying to bring in. Right now, so much of immigration is being done by executive order, and that can change with presidents, and sometimes with the same president, it can change.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we've been working on that. We started working on it with Ken Salazar, Michael Bennett, way back. So it's a coalition that keeps going. DU did a big study on it. It keeps getting discussed, but then after elections, it gets kind of lost again.
Yeah.
But I think COVID really brought it home, where we have crops in the field that aren't coming out. So I think it just kind of brought it to the forefront again.
Mhm.
With the fires in Colorado, I really think we need to look at bringing in some Fire Hawks, Black Hawks changed into firefighter helicopters. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, when they repeal Gallagher, you counties are going to supposedly get all this money that you don't need. So you can all band together and we'll buy one of those Firehawks for out here to just do our prairie fires.
I think we need 3.
3? Oh, 3 for Northeast Colorado. Well, heck, let's
No, not Northeast Colorado, just in Colorado.
Colorado. Well, and I know Colorado REA is looking at some wildfire mitigation that they're going to introduce in session, because the rural electrics put power into all those areas, and some of it's federal land, and they're not allowed to cut back. So they can't get trees away from their electrical lines, and sometimes they can't get in when the fire starts to get stuff repaired or hooked back up. So they're going to introduce some legislation in session, which I think will be very important for us to be part of. It's a little easier out here on the plains, but because we don't have anywhere near as much federal land as they do in the mountains. I just thought we had some extremely interesting speakers. I took some notes. The big fun thing is Melanie and I and a bunch of the rest of you don't know it yet, but you will be. One of our speakers said we were talking about how to tell our story and how to do it differently than what we've been doing, because we don't seem to be getting as much attention. And our keynote speaker yesterday showed us a viral video of old people dancing to Call Me. So we're going to do our own viral video on different topics out here in Eastern Colorado. And I bet we get some attention. And they expect us to be a little different out here anyhow. So we might just as well go along with the program.
I bet we've got a lot of good ideas.
So, so be thinking of songs that, you know, something that has to do with oil and gas that we can do something to. And with the technology now, we can do it on Zoom. We don't have to get together. So we can put oil rigs in the background and go
We can do that.
drilling.
It's on divorce, but we could say they got the gold mine and we got the shaft.
Oh, Dusty, you want to check with your boss?
I can, yeah.
Find out where he went. They contacted me at 7 this morning, so I know they know about it. You guys, I did really good at the art show last night. I sold several pieces. And there was only 12 people that came in, but they spent money, so that was cool.
That's great. And is it online too? Are you doing it virtually as well?
No, it's you know, we haven't talked about that. I'm on the Citizens Committee for the college program. That's an interesting idea.
Well, I wondered because our my church here, they have a great art show every November, and it's I think a third of the cost of the artwork goes towards the church. And anyway, they're doing it virtually this year because of COVID. So
Yeah, we had a smaller crowd last night, but last night was the first kind of cold night we've had early on. So we go from 4 to 7, and we also had a blacksmith last night as part of the art walk. So a lot of the people were watching him. He brought his forge and everything. So a lot of people were watching him. And plus it was warmer by his forge. Okay. James or Garrett, are either one of you with Congressman Buck's office?
This is James. Yes, I'm his deputy chief of staff, and Garrett is his chief of staff.
Okay, so he'll be joining us shortly.
Yes, he's. We're expecting him to be on.
Okay. Ah, there he is there. Guess I should let him on the call. Good afternoon, Congressman. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kathy. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much for joining us. As we've told everybody else that we have been talking to, this is very informal. I'm sure you may remember Patricia Brewster Wilkie from out in the Otis area.
Hi there.
She's calling in from Ireland today, so you have some followers around the world. She's having supper as we're doing lunch. This is going to be very informal today. A lot of us have known you for a while, but we still, every time it comes up for re-election, we think it's time to touch base and reconnect. We'd like to have you tell us what you've accomplished in the last couple of years, why you're running another 2 years, and what are some of the things that you want to accomplish in this next go-round.
Well, I'll tell you, First of all, I'd love to see you more than just when I'm running for reelection, Kathy. But and I think we have on occasion. I think we've met at the dinner theater off of I-25 and some other opportunities. But I am. I never thought 2020 would be as absolutely strange as it is, and I am. Proud that my office has reached out to veterans and reached out to others that are suffering from this disease, and we've helped people get PPP loans to stay in business. We've helped with various projects in the district, helped get $700,000 for the Vance Brand Airport in Longmont, helped with the GAP project for I-25 and south of in Douglas County, south of Denver. Also helped on the I-25 project north of Denver. I have done ag tours out on the Eastern Plains and have heard the challenges that our wheat farmers have with the Surface Transportation Board, and have been working to try to solve some of those issues and make sure that their products can be transported regularly and at a lower cost, so that they can stay in business and pass their family farms on. Proudly supported the tax reform bill and significantly raised the death tax so that farmers and ranchers could pass their businesses on, and other small business people could pass their businesses on. Worked very closely with Corey Gardner and Michael Bennett on a lot of different projects. Very proud that the Bureau of Land Management is moving to Colorado, and the Space Command's at least initial office and hopefully permanent office will be here in Colorado. I think all those things are good for economic development throughout the whole state. I have worked diligently with the folks in some of the areas to try to make sure that I am serving as an ambassador for economic development. One of the businesses in Rocky Ford is I think it's called Innovative Water Technologies, and met with them and have been working with the Guatemalan government and USAID because I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and trying to connect those folks. Also working with another business that has a UV light that can disinfect wheelchairs and do other great things. And so I am busy working, although not as often out in the Eastern Plains as I would like to be, but certainly on Zoom calls and with other means.
One of the things very quickly, sorry, Representative Beck, we've got some new people on the call from this morning. If you have questions, put them in the chat room. All questions have to come through there so that we give the congressman plenty of time to be able to answer our questions. So with that, what do you see that you didn't get accomplished that you still want to get accomplished as far as legislation? I know one of the things I've worked with you on, or our group, is immigration, and I know that's still on the table. So would you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So I think there are a few things. One, I think the trade deal with China needs to be finalized, and hopefully President Trump gets reelected, and hopefully we have some consistency in our interactions with China. And I hope that Europe joins us in the concerns over China cheating in trade. Unfortunately, agriculture really took the brunt of the Chinese retaliation, and that's unfortunate. The president did what he could to try to help in that situation, but we've got to make sure we have a trade deal with China, and that's an issue that is left unresolved. Immigration is another issue that has never been resolved. I voted for giving the DACA recipients a permanent resident status in the U.S. in return for some changes to the tax reform code. We had a majority of Republicans voting for that, but didn't get to 218. Every Democrat voted against that 2 years ago. And so we got close to some really major reforms in immigration, and we never got to the point where we got the job done. I think that securing the southern border is important, and I think that making sure that we have agricultural guest workers and a steady supply of labor in areas where Americans are not meeting the economy's needs is important. And I will continue to support agriculture in that way, and frankly, the high-tech area also. We have a lot of Indian high-tech visa workers in Colorado, and I think that it is important that we do everything we can to boost our economy with immigration.
Okay. The next question is, what are you doing to reduce the national debt?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not voting for a lot of spending bills, and it doesn't make me very popular in Congress, but you know, the time with COVID is not really a time to reduce the national debt. Unfortunately, we have to make sure that our economy moves forward at a time when people are forced to be out of work as a result of government shutdowns. It's an interesting issue, Kathy, because the governors shut down the economy, and then they look to the federal government to pay for unemployment and other ways to keep the economy liquid. And we just can't keep writing this check. One of the bills that I voted against was a $6 trillion spending bill, $6 trillion. And we were presented with that bill with about 16 hours to review it. And it was stuffed with pork for the Kennedy Center and all kinds of other projects, and I just couldn't vote for it. I will absolutely vote to support small business and unemployment, but I can't vote for that sort of spending. But I will do everything I can. I voted for a balanced budget amendment. I have fought against spending, and I fight against military spending and social spending because we have to keep both of those as low as possible if we're going to get anywhere near balancing the budget. But right now we are accumulating debt at a really alarming rate.
The next one, Pro 15 is on record as supporting future interstate designation for the Ports to Plains and a portion of the Heartland Expressway corridors. As described in Senate Bill 4701, sponsored by Senator Gardner. Since the corridor is largely with your district, what are your thoughts about that long-range vision?
Yeah, I had worked with some of my friends from Texas on the Ports to Plains. I saw Joe on the call, and I knew that Ports to Plains would be coming up, and so it's good to see you again, Joe. I have to make a decision. The bill has not come up at this point. I am in favor of it. We just finished a conversation about how do we reduce the deficit and reduce the debt. And now we're talking about a major transportation project, and I think we've got to find a way to pay for that. And if we are going to be involved in a large infrastructure bill, I'm absolutely in favor of Ports to Plains being part of that large infrastructure bill. But I recognize the economic development really necessity for that on the Eastern Plains, and am in favor of seeing that economic development, but I have to figure out how to pay for that before I am going to be fully committed to that Ports to Plains project.
Well, and this particular bill has no funding attached to it. It's a future designation for such time. It's on the books, it's on the planning process, and at such time as hopefully there is money for infrastructure, then it would be ready to go. So that's kind of the avenue that this was approached from. One of the things I have a question, and you may not, I know you've written a book about it, you may not be able to address, but in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, we had a Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican president. It's conceivable that next year we will have a Democratic House, Democratic Senate, and Democratic president, because we keep switching back and forth between the two parties when nothing gets done. What's the process? What do we have to do to get the parties to more work together? Is it having a higher percentage to get a vote through? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do, Kathy. It's a great question, because what we really are looking at right now is a divided country. if you look at the news any night, you're going to see radical anarchists, and I don't even necessarily consider them leftists, but anarchists burning down our cities. And at the same time, you've got others on the right that are very concerned about constitutional rights and other issues. And so Congress is a reflection of the politics of the country, and we are a divided country right now. I wish I could tell you that everybody in Congress should go to Congress and close the door and put their self-interest in getting reelected aside and do what's best for the country, but we couldn't agree on what's best for the country, and it's a fundamental change. The Democrats in the Senate are talking about doing away with the Electoral College and packing the Supreme Court and making Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico states so that they get 4 more U.S. senators, all things that Republicans are going to fight against very strongly. And so the tax cuts that passed, not a single Democrat voted for tax cuts. I thought they were an important way for us to revitalize the economy. And we saw for 3 years very greatly improved economic indicators as well as revenue to the federal government. And for some people, that's counterintuitive that if you lower taxes, you increase revenue to the governor. But there was so much foreign investment that came into this country that helped our economy that that's exactly what happened. And so I hope that we can go to Washington, D.C. and work on real problems like immigration. I'm the ranking Republican on the immigration subcommittee. I have a heart for solving that immigration problem. Every single time I'm down in Rocky Ford or over in Lamar or up in Sedgwick County, I constantly hear about the need for immigrant labor, and I get that. But it has to be done in a way that creates a legal work system and a system that is sustainable.
Okay, the next question on here is, what are you doing to protect our Constitution?
Everything. I consider myself a constitutional conservative, and I am trying my hardest to make sure that we don't violate the Constitution, and that happens in all sorts of different ways. But I'll give you a real good example. I could list dozens literally that reflect my votes. But one thing that I have done is to make sure that Congress has the ability to declare war. And that may not be something that Progressive 15 is taking a position on, but it's something that every one of us is affected by. Right now, Congress has ceded its authority since really World War II to the executive branch. And then if something goes wrong, Congress says, well, it's not our fault, the president did that. And for the first time really in decades, we have a president who has been withdrawing troops consistently and not engaging in battles. And we certainly have been provoked by Iran and other countries. This president has been very surgical in his responses and has not engaged us in an all-out war. And I think that's absolutely critical. And if Congress doesn't use the power of the purse to require that the president not engage in military conflicts until Congress approves those, we're wimps, and it's a disgrace. I have done that in Yemen and in Syria recently, and have worked across. There's a good example, Kathy, of working across the aisle. The Progressive Caucus of the Democrat Party and the Freedom Caucus and the Republican Party are working closely together on that particular constitutional principle for different reasons, but still overlapping interests that we find and move forward. I'm working very closely with David Cicilline, who is the Democratic mayor of Providence, Rhode Island. And the two of us are working very closely on holding big tech accountable and making sure that we break up the monopolies and really what is leading to bias on those platforms. And so David and I talk on a weekly basis, and we will be introducing legislation together to do that. So I think there are a number of things that I have been involved in that are bipartisan and very cognizant of our constitutional duties.
Okay. Any other questions? Boy, when they know you, you don't get as many questions, Ken, because they have a pretty good idea. The guy running against you, they had 50 million questions. So they were trying to get to know him.
Well, Kathy, let me mention one more thing if I can.
Yes.
You mentioned my opponent. There are people, members of Congress and members of Congress in Colorado who do not debate their opponents because they're in safe districts and they just don't do it. I have always debated my opponent and always will debate any opponent anywhere because I think it's so important that just like this candidate forum, we're held accountable and we are accessible. When Republicans were trying to change the Affordable Care Act, I conducted more town halls in Colorado than anybody else in the delegation. And it's simply because there were a lot of people, Democrats and people to the left, who were concerned about that change. And I wanted to make sure that I listened to them, that I heard them, and that I responded to them. And I took what they said back to DC. And I did everything I could on pre-existing conditions and some other issues that they raised at those forums. And so first, let me thank you for holding the Progressive 15 candidate forum, but also understand that I am not going to shirk from my responsibility to let people know that I am a public official. And in spite of sometimes the arrows that are aimed my way, I am gladly going to engage in public debate because I think it's so important in our country to do that.
Well, and I have to thank you for that because you always have been at the table talking to us, no matter whether our viewpoints were the same or different. You listened to the questions, you answered them, and that brings a lot of respect from me personally, but from the region as well. That's not always the case that happens out here. And then you've got Dusty, who we all just love. So, you know, she kind of really is 90% of your goodwill points for a lot of things. So you better keep her around. Dusty, I'll take that money later.
And one more thing, Kathy, I do my best to get on the radio also on the Eastern Plains. I understand that is a really important way of communicating with people. And so I do a couple of, actually a few radio shows on a monthly basis to make sure that I am telling people what's going on in DC, but also listening to the concerns of folks. So.
Well, and we have started doing a series of on-screen Zooms like this that we call Plain Talk. It's kind of our 30-minute catch-up time. And after the first of the year, we'll start planning those again. And we're going to reach out to the newly elected people to come and do a Zoom conference call with some Q&A and so that we can keep up a little bit better, because we don't have a lot of meetings and we're probably even going to have less next year again. So we'll be reaching out to you to get you on. We had Senator Gardner and Senator Bennett this year, and that was as far as we got before other things got in the way. But we'll get you or Mr. McCorkle, whoever is going to be the next representative for the area on those talks, and that's another way of staying connected with us out here.
That would be great, and Dusty will be glad to arrange that if I am fortunate enough to be reelected.
All right. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us today, and you have a great weekend. Are you in DC or are you home?
I am home, and in fact, I will be with Mr. McCorkle in about 2 hours in Elizabeth to hold our debate there. So,
is it going to be televised?
It will not be televised. We couldn't find much interest in it, but it will be live streamed, so people will be able to pick it up.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so Dusty, I expect, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 coffees out of that.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right. Well, let's see if usually I have so much stuff on the schedule that we're always running behind. Like yesterday, we actually had to cut out a whole segment because we had a talker, which I thought we would have today. So I'm assuming you're all getting work caught up in between all of this. So I guess it's better than being out of time or out of town and having dead time. at least you can work in your office a little bit. So we'll hang in there till our next one at 2:00, and we'll go from there. I'll see if I can find another background screen. We'll see if people really get with it out there. I may have one more prize somewhere that I come up with for some creativity in between sessions.
On the background screen, it told me that when I tried to use a photograph, it told me it needed to be a plain color. But I see Joe's got a nice sky behind him there, and so
Yeah.
his tags. So I'm not sure why.
I don't know.
I'll have to work on that in the break.
Her mountain cabin in hers. We thought it was for real until she didn't know what was in the background, and then we knew she got it from
I
somewhere.
did too, Leanne. I thought it was your house.
All right, see you in a few.
Okay.
Patricia, are you being more successful at retirement than I have been? You're on mute. You're on mute. I did not hear any of that because you were on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now, Joe? No. Can you hear me now, Joe?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, when I started to look for the backgrounds there to pull up some photographs, I've lost the Zoom meeting. So I'm not, can you see me too or just hear me?
No, I can see you.
Okay, because I can't see me. I haven't got that screen up. Where do I find that?
Go down in your bottom and there's a little blue icon with a camera in it.
Yes, I've got my Zoom
And if you click on
icon
that,
up
it
there.
should come up. If you're only
When-
seeing a little
When I
bit,
bring it up, I just get the photograph of you, or maybe that exit minimize Zoom. There we go. Yeah,
that's it.
now I can see myself too.
Yep.
Yeah. So what I said was, because I'm here in Ireland, it's easier than when I'm back in Colorado. You know, when I'm home in Colorado, it's very hard being retired. But actually, when I retired almost 4 years ago now, I came back here to Ireland to help my brother look after my mother. And so, of course, you know, was really busy with that. And then after Mom passed away, then the same thing, you know, other family members and lots of things happening. So it's easier, but I really miss my work at the Resource Center and the involvement with politics. And so it's really nice to be able to catch up a little on something like this. I would like to have done the conference, but it was just too hard with the times.
Yeah, I made the first day of the conference. Yesterday was, you know, I'm still working for Ports to Plains.
Oh, you are? Okay, so you're not fully retired then.
I didn't know I ended up fully. I actually ended up as busy as I was before. I just don't do the town alignment stuff along with Ports to Plains, but Ports to Plains got busier, and you know.
So you're doing that full time.
Yeah, big example was yesterday. I spoke to people in Colorado, in Texas, in New Mexico, in Washington, D.C., and in Mexico.
That's super. And so tell me, what's happening with Ports to Plains these days?
Well, we're in Colorado, CDOT spending about $31 million on upgrades to 287 that add passing lanes, because the traffic counts have increased so much on the Super 2 that we're now having some really bad accidents. We had one a couple of months ago that killed 8 people in one accident.
Terrible.
Two families head on. In 71, CDOT finished a study that's took them since 2017 to get finished, that looked at diversion off of I-25 onto 71 if they made improvements, and it came back really strong. About 1,100 trucks, or 7 to 9% of the trucks on I-25 would use an alternative corridor if it was there. And so in September of this year, I alluded to it in the one question, Senator Gardner introduced legislation that would designate all of the Ports to Plains corridor, actually in Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Colorado, and a portion of the Heartland Expressway on 71 between Lyman and Brush as a future interstate. We just finished in Texas a year-long study that was directed to have done by the Texas legislature on the feasibility of upgrading the entire Ports to Plains corridor to an interstate, and it came out really, really positive. 76% return on investment, a 2.41 cost benefit ratio, $55.6 billion added to the Texas economy. And, you know, you have some cities like Lubbock and Amarillo that are large, but largely the corridor in Texas is just like the corridor in Colorado. It's small cities. And so the benefit is just huge. And we started that study with TxDOT not supportive at all of it. Same reasons that Colorado seems very wishy-washy on the whole thing. We don't have enough money to build it. But by the time the study was done, they wrote a letter to Congress saying they support the future interstate designation because
I
the
see.
results were so strong. So doing lots of work with both state legislators across 9 states and federal legislators and communities. And
That's
it's
very
still-
cool. And of course, the thing about that is it's funny. I mean, here we are with the election coming up and the party thing being so important. And that kind of work, of course, it really makes no difference what political party people are in, does it? It is about getting the work done.
Yeah. In the House, in their infrastructure bill, we were able to get future interstate designation for Texas and New Mexico in. And it was a very bipartisan effort with Cuellar and Lujan, Cuellar from Texas and Lujan from the Democratic side, and Arrington and Thornberry, Hurd, and some of those on the Republican side that carried the legislation into the House.
Oh, that's cool. So does your kind of work then tend to be less partisan than a lot of work, do you think?
Yeah, it used to be totally nonpartisan. Now spending portion of it becomes very partisan.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah.
Transportation is so far behind that unless somebody steps up and says, we're going to put more money into it, the U.S. is going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Double the amount of trucks that are on the road right now. And
so you've continued to have some very interesting years since I left.
Yes. I don't get to do quite as much of the other things that I got to do as working for the town of Lyman and
yes,
building local projects.
Not so much local stuff.
Yeah, I still serve on Troy's board as an advisor to Lincoln County Economic Development, and I still do some of the foreign trade zone work for the town of Lyman on a contractual basis, but not very much anymore.
Well, I don't suppose you have a lot of time for the local stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But don't let Joe kid you. We call him often and say, hey, you're our encyclopedia for various economic development stuff. So we call on him often.
Yeah, our support for Ports to Plains, we're able to get a lot of the cities and the counties and the economic development groups along the corridor. City of Brush, Morgan County, Washington County, Lincoln County Economic Development, Town of Lyman, Kiowa County, City of Lamar. But we also, outside of the area, got folks like Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation, Colorado Motor Carriers, and Colorado Concern, which is the group of 300 business CEOs in the state. It's part of their recommendations for Colorado that I-25 just can't be the answer all forever into the future. They've got to look at something alternative.
Yeah. So very broad-based.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's interesting in Texas. I spend a significant amount of my time in Texas. When I was by Zoom now, but still do the work with Texans.
How are those Texans to work with?
I get along great with them, and they respect me a lot, and so it's a good working relationship.
That's good.
they definitely have some more money sometimes than Colorado communities do, and so it's helpful. When I was working both for the town and Ports des Plaines, we had 4 employees, and I retired 2018 in February. On April 9th, the Ports des Plaines board decided that the current president and the administrative assistant no longer needed to work for Ports des Plaines.
Ooh.
And they have never replaced those. So there's 2 of us. There's another vice president that's in Lubbock, and the 2 of us are the staff now.
Okay. And unfortunately, they probably won't replace them if you 2 are doing the same work that 4 people did.
We are talking about a plan for the future right now, because they really do need to get someone in and get them familiar with what's going on.
Mm-hmm, sure. And what about the next generation? Are they coming? Are they stepping up and coming up?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Transportation is a hard thing to get people talking about. They just assume it's going to be there.
Mm-hmm, right.
And no matter what you think about how much should go to transit versus highways, everybody still relies upon the highway at least to get their products to the shelves of where they're buying their groceries or having it delivered to their house.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that message we just keep telling, and hopefully they'll understand the value of rural connections to urban areas.
Yeah.
Kathy,
yes, and I think the next, working with the next generation and the next generation now too. My old job at the Rural Communities Resource Center. Have you met Margot Ebersole?
I see her stuff, but I don't really know her.
Yes, she had been the interim director for the last few months, and the board just hired her now as the official executive director. So, that's great to see. Margot actually has worked at the Resource Center since she was a young teen doing volunteer work.
That's great.
So she has a greater understanding of the work, and she's worked in almost every program. And it's cool to see that next generation stepping up, and it's so necessary.
Yeah, it is. And then that's part of what we're saying is there's got to be some younger leadership that's developed. Because both the other vice president, whose name is Duffy, she's 3 years from retiring and really wants to retire. I'm beyond, but I don't mind the work, but I also recognize the need for transition. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. We have things are pretty, as far as COVID-19 is concerned, things are pretty bad in Ireland at the moment. We've hit this second wave we're looking at the possibility of the country going into total lockdown again. The government is making decisions about that while we speak.
Yeah, Colorado's increasing too. We had a real jump in Lincoln County.
Yes, I've been looking at the figures for Lincoln, Washington, Yuma.
But now we're back down to where there's no active cases at all.
Yes, so. I saw that on the Lincoln County Health Department site the other day.
So it's been interesting. I was going to tell you,
the spread with the schools back, and especially the colleges back. Colleges and partying and sports. It's not the sports that's the problem. It's the getting together after the game and all that. So it's really very difficult.
Yeah, it seems the jump that took place in Lincoln County was all caused by one family going to Denver to a birthday party and coming back. And the good news is it didn't spread beyond that family.
That's
almost
amazing that it
everything.
didn't. Did they
Yeah.
catch it early enough and get themselves isolated early on?
They don't tell you all that, so I don't know.
No.
I know
Mhm.
one was a middle school student, and so the middle school went out on quarantine for a couple of weeks, and they're back in place now. And one was a kindergarten child, but
And
didn't
the
hit the high
kindergartner
school.
actually got COVID.
Huh?
The kindergartner actually got COVID.
Sounded like it, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, our numbers last night they announced there were 104 children in Ireland. Ireland's interesting. Ireland is a quarter the size of 1/4 the size of Colorado, and the population is a bit less. The population is 5 million. When I first went to live in Colorado, Ireland and Colorado had the same population, 4 million. So interesting, the size of a country that's a quarter the size of our state. And anyway, they did say yesterday that 104 children below the age of 12 had tested positive. That's the highest number they've been for a long time. Luckily, with only one child so far, severely ill. But yeah, I think we may have only seen the tip of the iceberg, perhaps.
Yeah. My grandfather and my grandmother immigrated from Ireland.
Did they?
One of my favorite stories is bringing my soon-to-be wife at that point in time to visit my grandmother, and she didn't talk to my grandmother hardly at all, and I couldn't figure out why. And when we got out, I said, "What's the matter?" She says, "I couldn't understand a word she said. You didn't tell me that she had a brogue."
Her accent was still that strong.
Oh yeah, but I didn't know it because I'd grown up with it.
Yes, of course. And what part of Ireland did they come from?
I'm terrible about that family history stuff. My daughter is starting to gather all of that information, which I'm
And
glad
what was their name?
Kylie. It was Kylie.
It was, okay, yeah. I'm not sure what part of Ireland that's.
Yeah.
Ireland is still such that, a name is often synonymous with a county or an area, but I don't know about Kylie. It's a fairly common name here.
Yep.
Patricia, I'm interested to know how your country is handling being totally locked down. If they tried to do that here, we'd have major riots in the streets. But
well, at the start of back in April, we had a total lockdown. You couldn't, in the initial stage, you couldn't go for more than 2 kilometers from your home. And you could only go out to essential food shops and pharmacies. And everybody 70 and over and anybody whose health was compromised, the vulnerable, were not, of course, forced to stay at home, but really asked to stay home. And cocoon was the expression they used here. And of course, like everywhere else, it was very successful. It was hard. And then gradually, as things opened up, as it's happened everywhere. So now I think people are going to have a harder time with it than the first time, because the first time it was somewhat of a novelty, but now there's a group of people who certainly are going to have a hard time with it, but it looks like we're going to have to do it again.
Well, I know Denver just put some new restrictions on this morning. I saw update email come through. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I think the same thing here. It's going to be much harder because Colorado pretty much did, it sounds like, what Ireland did.
Yeah, they did it early and took the right steps.
Yeah.
I think what we have going for us in Colorado, of course, is the amount of wide open space. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That makes a difference. And because anywhere where you get a bunch of people together, it's more likely to spread. And so right now we have these 5 levels in Ireland. Dublin and the rest, most of the country is at level 3, and that means that just this week it changed to you can no longer have anybody in your house. You can meet with other people outside, and only the maximum is 6 people from 2 different families. But in 3 counties up in the north of Ireland, where the numbers are very high, they are in total lockdown. All the stores closed again, except for grocery stores and pharmacies.
So they're now doing it by county or by region rather than the entire.
Yes. This is the first time they've done it like that.
Well, and we now have levels that counties can move in and out of. So hopefully, if the numbers start getting really high in Colorado again, those of us on the Eastern Plains with lower numbers won't have to suffer the whole state effect.
Yes. And with us, with a small country like Ireland, the problem with this, we have this 26 counties in the south of Ireland, and then another 6 counties in the part that's governed by Britain up in the north. And so here in the 26 counties, we had an issue like with pubs, when pubs were closed. Pubs never have opened again in Dublin unless they sold food, and they have opened in the rest of the country. But then, of course, the trouble was anybody can drive then across the county lines to a pub somewhere else and spread the infection with them. So we're still kind of struggling with how to work that all out.
Okay, well, hopefully most everybody is around somewhere in the range of my voice. Our next speaker has joined us. And so Rod just won the Room Raider background with that harness on his wall.
Yeah, that's my wife's decorations.
Well, she did good, so.
Yeah, we have kind of a old-time agricultural theme going on in our house.
We'll wait for some of them. We had a short break, so I know that some of them will be coming back online here. They were doing errands and checking emails. I think I'm down to only 300 more emails to go through, so.
Yeah, they really pile up.
When you have 3 days of conferences and you're using your computer completely, it's hard to get to the emails when you're sharing the screen, so.
Well, when you asked me how I was dealing with retirement, I have to say I do not miss the emails. That part of it I don't miss at all.
Yeah, I have them coming in like crazy right now. So,
Rod, Patricia's joining us from Ireland today, but she was at the Rural Community Resource Center for years in Washington, Yuma County, and has retired.
Okay.
She spent 6 months in Ireland and 6 months here. Only she's been in Ireland a long time because she was in Ireland when COVID hit.
Well, good to have you here.
So she joins our Zoom calls every once in a while, and that's why we were asking her what was happening in Ireland, because it's about the same. It's smaller than Colorado, but the same population.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, that's like the whole country is like 1/4 of Colorado.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just doesn't seem possible.
Yes, I love when people over here ask me what size, when I say where I lived, and they ask me what size the county was,
Yeah. Well, you guys will be easy on me, won't you?
We've had both sides of the aisle today, and we've been so nice. When we
good.
When we know you, we're a little bit harder than we don't know.
That's to be expected, I guess.
Hi, Rod.
Hey, how's Leanne?
Excellent.
Good.
Gosh, it's good to see you.
Yep, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
You
been
know,
kind of hard to connect with people over the last few months.
yeah, and now where I don't represent Washington County, Leanne and I don't see each other very much.
I haven't seen you forever, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Joe and I really don't run in the same circles right now.
Yeah, Richard was on a little bit earlier, so we got that
Yeah.
perspective. So we're going to go. Oh, somebody just joined. One thing about this COVID thing is we're learning all kinds of new skills. I'm learning how to let people in and out of rooms, and
Yeah, I'm about sick of Zoom.
we are going to be very informal today, Rod. We're kind of just asking the people to tell us why they're running again. Give us a few ideas on what they've accomplished during the previous term. And we realized 1 year of that was kind of a waste. And then what might be your 1 or 2 top priorities going into the next session?
Okay, well, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Rod Pelton. I represent House District 65, Cheyenne, Kit Carson, Yuma, Phillips, Sedgwick, Logan, and Morgan counties. I was a county commissioner 6 years previous to that, was very active at CCI, was the chair of the Ag Steering Committee there, and so I had occasion to be at the Capitol several times to testify, and I caught whatever bug it kind of floats around there. And when John Becker decided not to run again, I drew the short straw and threw my name in the hat and was elected 2 years ago. You know, born and raised, I still live on the same section I was born and raised on here in Cheyenne County. Very passionate about agriculture, rural Colorado. There is definitely a rural-urban divide in this state, and it starts right in my House caucus. I have fellow legislators, Republican legislators, that just don't get what it takes to live out on the plains, to make a living out here, our way of life. And so my main mission at the Capitol is to talk to all the legislators, both sides of the aisle, to try to educate them on rural life, agriculture life, because there is definitely kind of a, you know, an attack on rural Colorado right now from Denver. So that is my main protection, I guess, is I do everything I can to protect rural Colorado and agriculture and oil and gas, whatever it takes to make things go around out here. So, you know, we were able to dodge a couple of really bad bills this year because of the COVID shutdown. And then when we went back, we just had to get work on the budget and School Finance Act. So I fully anticipate some of those are going to be coming back. One of the bad ones was a bill to remove state preemption on ag chemicals, which would mean that any municipality or county could just ban whatever and any and all chemicals that work in agriculture. So I anticipate it coming back where it won't be an election year. There was another pollinator bill and trying to outlaw nicotinoids. And so there's just several things, you know, the Boulder Front Range crowd is running the Capitol right now, and they don't get it. So we're going to have to continue to be on the lookout for those. Oil and gas is still under pressure from 181, and the rules that are coming down right now are going to shut the industry down in this state, in my opinion. So those are some of my goals. The last 2 sessions, being in the super minority, I feel very fortunate. The first year I got 5 bills passed, and last year I got 6 bills passed. So if it works for rural Colorado and is not very expensive, I will do everything I can to get on that bill. And so the Democrat legislators have found me to be somebody they can get along with and come to whenever they have those kind of bills to run. So I'm not afraid to work with the other side. That's the only way we can get anything done. I was very fortunate this year to have a bill that was just totally Republican sponsored in the House and Senate, but it was a very easy, no nonsense county bill for county electeds. So that's just some of the, I've got a couple bills already in the works. One is with CDOT to change statute. Right now, they have a $200,000 limit on overlays on projects out here in rural Colorado. We want to raise that to where it's hard to get contractors to relocate out here to do projects, especially these small overlays. And our highways out here are becoming very undrivable. The drivability is going way down. So I feel that's a good one. I'm also on a bill. I was on it last year, and because of the shutdown, we had to let it go to increase wages for people with developmentally disabled, bring it up to minimum wage. So I'm very proud to be on that bill. It's going to have a little bit of fiscal note, but not a lot. It's all Medicaid, so just have to move some of the monies around. So those are some of my bigger bills I'll be on so far that I know of. Whenever we get in session, the sausage really starts getting ground, and then other things will fall out, I'm sure. But that's kind of, and I'm very blessed. This election, I don't have an opponent. I was the only one foolish enough to put my name in the hat, and so I'm very blessed to be in that position this year, because with the COVID and all the parades and events being canceled and modified, it's just a lot harder to get out and get around the people. And so that's kind of it for right now, I guess, in a nutshell. I'm more than willing to take any questions.
Okay, well, and we have some here for you. The first one is what is your major ag concern?
Well, just we need to keep the state preemption on ag chemicals. There's also rumors out there that the state, they've tried to already hit agriculture, removing tax exemptions. I was proud to be a co-sponsor of an amendment this last year on a bill that they were going to remove the tax exemptions for basically anything agriculture. And we were able to talk to the sponsors. They didn't want to include agriculture, but the way the bill was written, they were. So we were able to get an amendment on there to keep ag exempt. But I think, we're looking at could be $1.5 billion shortfall at the state budget. We raided all the cash funds last year. So the easy cuts are gone. These are going to be tough cuts. So the administration is going to be looking for any and all dollars they can. So tax exemptions are one that could definitely be in the crosshairs, and I will do everything I can to ward that off.
And that was a question that was on there but was answered. Because there's no money, what's going to happen? And I think you're right. It's something we're going to have to watch really, really closely on where they choose to take away those exemptions and find that money to get us balanced.
Yeah, this legislature has shown that they have no stomach for priorities like highways and education. So in my opinion, we have a lot of programs at the state that could sure be trimmed back or all out eliminated. But with the Democrats in control, I don't think that's going to be the ones I want to cut, they don't want to cut. The ones they want to cut, I don't. So hopefully we can get some more Republicans elected in the House to narrow that margin up and change our committee formulas, and to where it'll be easier to maybe stop some of those real bad bills coming through.
And I don't think we have anybody on new, but just a reminder again, if you have questions, put them in the chat room so that we could make sure we have as much conversation with Representative Pelton and not so much with each other. What are your plans to help small businesses that have been affected by COVID-19?
Well, like I said, that's going to be really tough, where there's just not going to be any, extra dollars, any fluff out there to try to push out towards small business. What I will do, though, is anything that the governor is trying to hold up to send the way he wants to, whenever the legislature gets back in session, we're going to have some say over some of that. So maybe there's some of those dollars he'd want to divert, say, to a ski resort or something. Maybe we can send some of those out to small businesses in rural Colorado, some of those federal dollars that are coming into the state.
One of the things that we've mentioned to all of the people that have talked to us today is we're going to try to be way more proactive in finding out what bills that you're introducing and where we can use some of our Front Range communities that are part of Pro 15 to educate both Republican and Democrat. And so we're reaching out now and saying, let us know what you're introducing. Because there's only me, we can't do everything, but we will sure want to help on the ones that are that make the most major impact to our region out here and want to be a little more proactive. So as you're introducing bills, if you'll keep us up to date and in the loop on what you're introducing and let us help do some of that education for you.
And that would be greatly appreciated. The more people we can have at the Capitol from different organizations and just different walks of life, but from rural, the better. I always love it whenever people show up at the Capitol and we get to talk to them and not just the lobbyists, because lobbyists are being paid for their position. People aren't. They're just in there because there's something that concerns them. So anytime anybody wants to come to the Capitol, I cherish that. So
let's see, I'm not seeing any more questions. Anything else that you would like to share with us, Rod, that you haven't covered or tell us, or did you get your crop off?
What crops are left, a lot of them are coming out right now. I just run a small registered Angus cow herd, so I don't have any crops, but the farmer that I help with harvest, he's done now. So this is going to be a good year to get behind us in more ways than one. And hopefully 2021 has more moisture in it than 2020 did.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and for joining on, and tell your wife thank you for the lovely background. That was the best way.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kathy, and thanks to the group. Anytime you have any questions, reach out to me by email, or I think Kathy and I know Leanne has and Joe probably has my cell number. I'm not ashamed for that to be out. So if you have any concerns or questions, just reach out to me.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you
Great to
very
see
much.
you.
Okay, thank you. You guys have a great day.
Okay, so now we have 2 hours till Corey Gardner gets here. He's on a slow horse from Julesburg or slow plane from DC or whatever. I think him and John have another debate tonight, which is why he wanted to be the latest one that we could do today. It would have been nice to have Governor Hickenlooper talk to us. Would have been nice to have Representative Crow, though we never could even get Mike Kaufman, so I don't know why I'm picking on Jason Crow. But they do represent a part of our region and a lot of the, and they need to know about what's going on out here. So we'll continue to reach out. So we've got a couple of hours. I would say if you're back by 10 till 4 in case Corey is early. He said he's only got 30 minutes, so we should be finishing up for the day in about 2.5 hours. Unless somebody wants to do a song and dance, or, you know, you have a program you want to present. Patricia and Joe have already talked about all the retirement things, so.
I forgot my hat and cane, Kathy. I could have done that.
You could have done something, you know. Troy will remember that for the next conference.
I think I'll stick with my trombone.
Oh, okay. Trombone is good. See you in a while.
So it's not just what's going on in the pot, it's what's going on around it as well. What is this? So that one last detail. Can you imagine those hostas are starting to go over now? But it's going to leave big voids, you know, through the winter.